The New York State Department of Transportation presents the DOT POD.
And welcome into the DOT POD. I'm Josh Heller.
And I'm Anya Cardos.
And we are delighted to have you joining us. Well, in today's episode, we are shining a spotlight on rail safety, which is an essential aspect of our transportation system that millions of people rely on for their daily commutes, as well as in getting the goods we need each and every day. But did you know that the New York State Department of Transportation plays a crucial role in keeping our rail system safe?
Our guests today, Mike Labello and Brian Galvin, are walking us through the vital work that DOT is doing through rail inspections to monitor New York State's rail infrastructure and how these efforts are protecting not just passengers, but also the communities surrounding these rails. Please welcome us in joining Mike and Brian. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Can you start out by sharing a bit about yourselves and your roles here at DOT?
Sure. So, my name is Mike Labello. I'm the section manager of the Highway Rail Grade Crossing Program. The mission of the Grade Crossing Program is to advance safety improvement projects at railroad crossings. I started with this particular department in 2014, this particular section. In 2019, I became the section manager. Prior to that, I worked in public transportation from 2001 through 2014. So I've been pretty much within the public transportation world ever since. My role as administrator is to administer the program, administer the projects, and comply with federal and state regulations.
My name's Brian Galvin. I've been with the department for 19 years. I've always been with OMSS, Office of Modal Safety and Security. I started out in the Planning and Development Bureau. We did technology projects, and then from there, I think to 2017, I moved over to Public Transportation Safety Bureau as a state safety oversight manager. And then last February, I became the acting manager, so I oversee the rail safety inspection section as well as the Public Transportation Safety Board rail section as well.
Yeah, well, again, thank you both for taking some time and chatting with us. You know, I think we'll start, and we kind of mentioned in the opening that this is something that, you know, when you think of DOT, you kind of think of roads and bridges, right? That's the first thing that pops to mind. It's the thing that, we use pretty much every day. But that being said, obviously, this is a major portion of the transportation industry, both for people and for goods. So let's start out just kind of discussing the history of rail inspections here in New York, how far back it goes, and when DOT became involved in this kind of work.
Sure. So in terms of rail safety, we started back in 1910 under the Public Service Commission. And then kind of like what we see today started back in 1970 with the Rail Safety Act, the feds passed. That kind of is where the framework of what we have today. So all the feds decided to start to regulate the industry, and because of that, we have what's called the State Participation Program, where it allows the states to participate and inspect railroads within their state.
And who are the inspectors that work within the rail safety inspection section? Who are they?
Yeah, so we have a great group of guys. Right now, there's 13 inspectors throughout the state. They represent different, what we call disciplines. We have, we can start out with track discipline. Obviously, those folks, they are looking at the tracks themselves, the tracks that are in yards, tracks that are on main lines, and anything that's the infrastructure associated with that. Then we have what's called a motive, power, and equipment inspector. Those guys go out and they inspect locomotives and all the rail cars. We also have hazmat inspectors. Those guys go out and they'll inspect hazmat tanks, and they'll also inspect any shipping documents that are related to the hazmat to ensure that they're shipping what they're supposed to be shipping. We also have operational practices inspectors. Operational practices inspectors go out and look at train crews to ensure that they're following the rules and regulations of the railroad and the federal regulations as well. And then we just started this year. We hired a person for a signal and train control inspector. Those guys go out and they inspect signals in the system, the rail system itself, and they also look at grade crossing signal systems as well.
And are these former railroaders? Were they working for railroad companies? Is that kind of the transition that they make from that role into this one at DOT?
Yes, they are. In order to get this job, you have to have rail experience, and these guys they bring a huge amount of information. They have a huge amount of experience, and they make us look good in the main office. Without them, it certainly wouldn't happen. So they're very dedicated folks to safety, to ensure everybody goes home safe at night.
You mentioned that there are people that are already, have a background in this, but talk about the kind of training that people need in order to do this. You mentioned some of those disciplines, and not only are they things you need to be trained in to be able to do, but they're things that are constantly changing, things that are constantly evolving, whether it's technology, whether it is, the types of things that are being, that are on those trains. There has to be not only a kind of a base level training, but also kind of a continuing education as far as making sure that they and you are on the cutting edge of whatever is out there.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, there's the state participation program, and part of that is our inspectors get certified by the Federal Railroad Administration, and in order to do so, they go into the on-the-job training program, which is usually 8 months to a year. Once you get hired on as a state employee, you go into the certification program. There's different levels. There's less than apprentice, and then journeyman. As our policy, we typically only take someone would be rated as a journeyman, and that lessens the amount of time that it takes. So that's why it takes 8 months to a year to get certified as an FRA inspector. Once they finish that process, they cut them loose, and they inspect just like a Federal Railroad Administration inspector would. They have the same type of education and background that those guys do. Every year, they have to go for certification to ensure that they're up to date on all their training, and they understand that if there was any changes in the regulations or anything like that, they get They typically have to fly out. There's a place out in Colorado, Pueblo, Colorado, where they fly. There's a big training ground out there that they go to, and they end up doing their certification out there. It's either there or Oklahoma City that they have to go to. And it's usually they go for a week or so, and they get trained up on anything new for the last year.
Well, let's bring Mike into this conversation as well. With all of these inspections that are going on across the state, what are we learning about the safety of our rail network here?
Well, certainly the safety of our rail network has improved greatly. Since the early 70s, when we had roughly 150 accidents or incidents per year, to present day where we're in the area of 20 to 25 incidents or accidents per year. So rail safety is having a great effect on the industry in general. And if you look at railroads, obviously they started, I want to say probably the late 1800s. If you're a fan of the Gilded Age, you get a little bit of a history
right.
on railroads. And crossings themselves have been around since its inception, but just at a greater level now, because in the 1800s, the road network was sparse, where now it's just very congested. So safety has greatly improved since its inception. When you consider that you have more cars, more traffic, more roads, but your accident count is going down, that's a positive sign.
Yeah, no question about that. And you mentioned, there are more cars out there, but there's also, a ton of track. So that, and this is kind of for both of you, talk about the expansiveness of this. I mean, you don't have the largest team in the world, but you're dealing with, I mean, thousands of miles of track, which is going to intersect with roads. So, I mean, both of you are keenly aware of the amount of contact there can be with the traveling public. Talk about, just the breadth that you guys have to deal with to make sure that the entire state of New York is safe when it comes to railways.
Yeah, there's, I think, roughly 40 or so railroads in New York State, and they're all over, right? That's including commuter rail, and then the freight rail. But like you said, they're all over, and they continue to operate, and we do our best to get out to inspect all the railroads that we can. We always hit it. We hit our marks all the time, but it's just like you said, it's amazing how many railroads are out there and what our guys do. Like you said, because we're actually down eight. We have 8 vacancies, and our guys pick it up and keep going.
How many miles approximately do you guys have to are out there to be inspected?
So I'm not positive on the actual number, but there are thousands of miles, in upwards of 6,000 to 7,000 miles probably.
Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming. In New York State alone, we have over 5,500 grade crossings.
Wow.
Roughly half of those are considered public, and the remainder is considered private. Private would be, a crossing to a farm or industry or private business. And our responsibility, our jurisdiction is over those roughly 2,700 public crossings.
But that's still 2,700 points of contact, opportunities for nothing good to happen, because you're dealing with, with cars, with trucks, with
people,
pedestrians and cyclists, crossing a place where there can and will be, a massive train coming through.
Well, we have a saying that the safest crossing is no crossing. And it's probably good to define a crossing. So a crossing is where a road meets track. That's an at-grade crossing. There's also grade-separated crossings where the bridge, the train bridge may go over the road, or the highway bridge may go over the train tracks. So most of our work is associated with the at-grade crossings.
And I was going to say that has to be probably where most of the the accidents that you would see probably occur at those at-grade crossings.
The human factor of this.
Oh yeah. The everyday driver doesn't understand the infrastructure that's at a crossing. We're reliant on them paying attention to the devices, the warnings that they're giving them. Their perception when they approach a grade crossing is that if the lights are activated and the gates are dropping, they're going to have to come to a stop.
But some people still go around those crossings.
Yes, but that's usually because of the duration they're waiting. So most grade crossings will have roughly a 27-second wait time from when the train is detected on the tracks. It signals the train box, and it activates the devices, drops the gates, activates the flashing lights, activates the bell. 27 seconds is a reasonably short amount of time to wait for the train to arrive. When you get into the 40, 50, 60-second level, that's when patience is tested and people try to go around the gates. Never a good sign, because while you may not see a train, or there may be a train stopped, there could be another track, there could be a train coming in another direction, and you're not going to win that battle.
What technology is used to detect those trains? Is it a weight mechanism? Is it more like
sure? So there's several forms of technology. You have a track circuit. So a track circuit, think of a light switch. Somewhere back, maybe a half a mile from the crossing itself, there's a track circuit. When the train crosses the circuit, flips on a switch, like a light switch, that sends a signal to the railroad house, which is pretty much a little metal building no larger than a backyard shed. That in turn triggers the lights, the gates, and the bells to start ringing and start dropping, giving anybody approaching it, that perception that they're going to have to come to a stop.
I mean, I know, obviously, people have places to go. Patients does get tested. For me personally, I love getting stuck at one of those. I have a young son. I just like watching the trains.
I like watching the trains go
Although
by.
I
too.
will say some of the freight trains, after a while, I'm like, all right, we need to we need to move this along.
How long are some of those? I'm just curious
Well,
about that. How long can they be?
long.
Well, from a driver's perspective, when they arrive at a grade crossing, they're not really sure what type of train is coming.
Right.
They're just waiting there, a little bit of anticipation, maybe a little bit of excitement. And if there's kids in the car, there's a lot of excitement.
That's right.
Right.
Kids
Or the young at heart.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Everybody loves trains. We go over tracks often, but how often is there going to be a train at it?
Right.
So the everyday driver, they're pulling up to a train track and they're focusing on the train, not on the infrastructure that surrounds it. And if that train happens to be a freight train when it comes, it could be 20, 30, 40, 50 cars or more.
That's like
2 or 3 miles.
2 or 3 miles.
Yeah.
Wow.
No.
That's amazing.
I just want to circle back to what Mike was saying about the grade crossing safety. There's a sign called the Emergency Notification System sign. It's a little blue sign that's at every grade crossing. It has the ID of the grade crossing, and it also has the phone number to the railroad that's responsible for that grade crossing. It's a little known sign. Not many people know about it, and it's not even really taught in driver's education. And really, if there's anything wrong with that grade crossing, you really should call that number on that sign first, even before 911 is called. You see a lot of cars that get hit by trains, and they often just call 911 and they don't call that number, and the railroad doesn't even know that they were on the grade crossing at the time of the accident.
Well, I would imagine many of the regulations that DOT is ensuring are met on our rail network follow much of what the federal guidelines are. Can you talk about what guidelines are in place and how is our department prioritizing them? How does that work?
Well, for Section 130 program, Section 130 is just the title of the law. So it's U.S. Code Section 30. Section 130 is the name of the funding source that we get. Section 130 has federal regulations associated with it, whether it's procurement, whether it's civil rights, or whether it's DB that you have to comply with. Then we also have the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is the engineering principles that goes behind the design of the technology that you see at grade crossings or that you don't see. There's stuff going on in the background that is there for one purpose, to keep that moment safe for you while you're enjoying that train going by. So those are the two regulations that we deal with, the Section 130 program and the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices.
Yeah, so in the inspection section, we have, it's a whole chapter dedicated to inspection regulations. So for each one, so the track has discipline-specific regulations they go through. Same thing with MP&E, the motive power and equipment disciplines, and it goes right down through. So there's some overlap with the OP, the operating practices discipline. They cover a lot of, like I said, the train crews. So they're looking at multiple different crafts, so to speak. They all our disciplines also do RWP, which is roadway worker protection observations, and that's a operating practices regulation. And that's just to ensure that everybody's going home safe at night, all the different train crews and the workers, the maintenance workers are going home safe at night. But every one of those crafts has a different set of regulations that they ensure every day that they're out there, to ensure that everything is safe on the network and the crews themselves are safe. So
you mentioned something earlier on, and I kind of wanted to touch on it a little bit, and that's hazmat. These are trains that oftentimes are driving through neighborhoods, cities, or even rural areas, but they're driving through civilization, and oftentimes they're carrying things that need to stay inside.
Contained.
Right? Yeah, they need to stay contained.
Yep.
And we've seen this in other states, and really, really terrible environmental problems and health problems. Talk a little bit about that hazmat program a little bit more, if you would, just because it does seem like something that's so very important. Just from a health and safety standpoint for everybody involved and anyone who lives anywhere near any of these tracks.
Yeah. So. For example, last year we inspected over 6,000 hazmat cars. Our hazmat inspectors did. We also do. We have these energy routes that we inspect on a quarterly basis. They'll go out and they'll just ensure that those routes are, I guess, gone through with a fine-tooth comb. They ensure that the track is inspected a little more than what they typically would do on these energy routes. So that would be the routes that typically you see like the oil cars on and the hazmat cars that are hauling like ethanol and things like that.
Okay.
So.
And what are those inspectors typically looking for when it comes to hazmat and those containers?
So the hazmat guys are typically looking at the valves. They're looking at to ensure that the tank itself is in. So there's different things they look at. It's like make sure the tank isn't expired, that it's supposed to be on the rail itself. Make sure all the valves are tightened the way they're supposed to be. Things like that typically either at the offloading, or not the offloading, but where they fill up the tanks to ensure that they fasten them properly and that nothing loosened over time when they're traveling down the rails.
When they actually do find something that's out of regulation, what happens then?
Yeah, typically they'll notify the carrier, the railroad themselves. They'll come out and they'll ensure that they tighten it down right there, or whatever it may be. Sometimes the stuff will, they'll find them that's starting to gas off or whatever, and they remediate it right then. And they note them with it. It's notified with a defect. They'll write them up for a defect and things like that. So,
what about for the tracks themselves, right? When you're out there, whether it's an energy line or whatever it might be, you're out there looking at the tracks. What are you looking for, and what remediation is there when something is found?
There's all sorts of stuff for rail. There's quite a bit of stuff that the guys have to know, and that's why they come with a huge amount of experience. They have, combined, they have decades of experience doing this. So a lot of them are ensuring that there's no cracked rails. All the bolts are tightened the way they're supposed to be. The ties themselves are in good working order. We call it the ballast, all the rocks that surround that are underneath the rail, and the ties they're in good work. It's in good working order, so that there's no water that's ponding and creating an issue.
And that work is important to the grade crossing world, because what he's doing helps prevent false activations at a grade crossing. And you want those things working properly all the time.
Oh, because like cracks and things like that can actually cause a false.
Sure.
Yeah.
A lot of the travel of information is through electrical currents. And if there's a puddle, for instance, or a crack in the rail or something. Right.
The rail is bonded, and then that signal gets sent through the rail to the next piece. So.
I would have never thought of that.
Yeah. It goes to that light switch you're switching on by the train activation. It's going to the box. If that rail is cracked, that doesn't occur. The gates don't drop.
Oh boy.
So
yeah,
I wanted to ask, and this is for both of you, for both your sides of this, what, if any, responsibility does the railroad itself have? Obviously, there has to be a lot of communication and working together with the railroad, whatever it might be, whether it's an Amtrak, whether it's a CSX, whatever, or any other. What responsibility do they have, towards the infrastructure that they use?
Well, they have, in our world anyways, they have all the responsibility because it's their infrastructure. We may be advancing projects to help fund or partially fund that work, but ultimately it's the railroad's infrastructure. They own it. They're responsible for it. And that's written into state law as well.
Yeah.
They're required to maintain it in a state of good repair.
Yeah. They're a private company. We're there to ensure that they're doing their job and maintaining their equipment that affects the public.
So you say you're looking at a rail and you see an issue with, say, that gravel, is that something that you guys would fix, or is that
No.
something that you would tell them, hey, this is a problem, y'all
Yep.
need to fix this?
We write up, so they'll get, once we're done with the inspection, we hand it to the railroad and say, here's your defects or whatever, here's your issues. And then depending on what it is, it may be, say, 30 days, we'll come back and to ensure that it's been mitigated.
So there has to be a lot of cooperation and a lot of communication with, the various different railroads that you guys,
Oh, absolutely. And we also have 11 regions, and each region has a regional rail coordinator who coordinates the activities between the railroad, state, municipalities, and so on. So there's a lot of DOT personnel involved in this.
So how many inspections did you do just in the past year alone?
So-
It sounds like you're overseeing a lot. So how many?
Yeah, so last year we did 5,800 miles of track. We inspected 25,000 rail cars, almost 500 locomotives, 1,500 operational observations. So that would be the OP inspector going out and looking at the different train crews and whatnot. And we also did 1,200 roadway worker protection observations. So they do quite a bit in a year.
and when something happens, it's not as if, you have to wait for business hours. You guys are there when the need arises.
Yep, we're on call 24/7. We have somebody that takes the shift, and then they get called in the middle of the night by stick, and they say, hey, whatever happened. Last year we responded to 61 accidents, and they were a mix, trespassers, grade crossing incidents. I'm trying to think what else. Those are our two biggest ones, is the grade crossing incidents and trespassers.
Well, when we wrap up each episode, if we have time, we like to ask our guests about their favorite DOT road trips and road tripping tunes. But in this case, as we're talking about rail, what might be your favorite train trip? And what would you be listening to when you're out on the rails?
Well, for me, it would be the Canadian Rockies on Amtrak, a all-glass ceiling train through the snow-covered mountains.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
That sounds really nice.
It's a beautiful location, beautiful area, and just a fun road trip on a train.
And do you have your, your headset on or your pods in there, and you're listening to any tunes, or is it just
No, I'm
soaking it all
staring
up?
out the windows and maybe heading down to the beverage car, things like that.
Brian, what about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty boring. I guess my train trip is done in New York. I take Amtrak. We take Amtrak quite a bit down to New York. So usually Rensselaer to New York in the morning, it's still pretty calm. The water's calm, and you get to see a lot of wildlife along the way. So that's pretty cool.
Well, that's just about going to do it for us here from the DOT POD. Want to seriously and sincerely thank both Brian and Mike for taking some time for coming down and chatting with us and telling us a little bit more about this portion, about this part of a huge part of DOT that I don't think enough people know about and appreciate as much as they should. But hopefully that'll change.
Right.
So thank you to you both for the work that you're doing on a daily basis, and of course for taking a few moments out of your day to sit down and talk with us two jokers. We really appreciate that.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much,
much.
guys.
Yes, appreciate you having us.
Well, again, that will just about do it for us, Anya. Another good, interesting one here today. Some perspective I never really thought about too much.
No, I agree with you. I don't really think many people would realize that DOT is invested in this kind of work and this kind of basically protecting our communities. So I really appreciate all their insight today. It was great.
No doubt about that. Well, thanks again to our guests, Brian and Mike, and thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in to this episode. We're certainly glad to have you, however you may be joining. We will be back next time. For Anya, I'm Josh. We'll be right here on the DOT POD.